Welcome, welcome everyone. We are here with Jenée Johnson, who actually has an accent aigu over her name in the same place that I do, right? And we had the pleasure to meet at Wisdom 2.0 a few months ago and started up a conversation. And a couple hours later, we were like, okay, we have to connect. And here we are.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be with you, Renee.
Oh, same here, same here. So before we get started, I'd love to tell people just a little bit about your background so they know your foundation and where you stem from. Jenée Johnson is a program innovation leader who focuses on mindfulness, trauma, and racial healing. She brings mindfulness into public health practices and programs in the San Francisco Department of Public Health. She's also the founder and curator of the Right Within experience, which we're going to talk about today. It's a mindfulness immersion program that reclaims humanity, joy, and well-being for people of African ancestry. For 15 years, she also served as the director of the San Francisco Black Infant Program, a program which provides direct service to Black pregnant women and new mothers. And she's also a keynote speaker, a professional coach, a HeartMath certified trainer, which I'm a fan of, and practitioner, as well as an emotional emancipation circles facilitator, which maybe you'll tell us a little bit about that, and certified to teach FEM, a meditative movement and wellness modality for women. And that's one of our connections there too, because Bernadette Pleasant, who leads that FEM program, is also in this video series. So yeah, tune into her interview as well, and you'll learn more about FEM. And at her core, Jenée is a champion and accelerator for human flourishing. And I concur, it's something that I felt immediately when we first started speaking at Wisdom 2.0. So welcome once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation and giving your audience a little richness, a sacred pause from the hectic days that most of us have been experiencing. It's time for refreshment, for sure.
It is time for a reset. I couldn't agree more. So I love to always turn back the hands of time before focusing on current work. So I'd love to start in New York, and we're both New Yorkers. We were talking a little bit about that earlier. And I would love to know, what was the catalyst way back when in New York, your New York days early on? What was the catalyst that kind of motivated you to embark upon this path of healing and service?
Great question. I think that something has always been inside of me. It's a connection to my essence, my core. My family is raised me in New York, but I'm a product of grandparents who, one set immigrated to New York from the Caribbean, and another set were a part of what we know as the Great Migration, where African Americans from 1917 to 1970 left the South in droves and came to northern cities. They left because of the very present violence, racialized violence, and segregation that limited their lives. And so with this heritage, this lineage of people who were brave and who moved to seek higher ground, if you will, that was already seated in me, in my DNA. And people who were very much alive and full of love and laughter and joy. One of my cousins was one of the founding members of the Dance Theater of Harlem, which is a ballet company for people of African ancestry, needing to be founded because Black bodies were not recognized or permitted to be in traditional white companies for all the reasons, our shapes, the way we look, and of course, racism, which is a thread, I must say, in my life, because it's very reductionist. and it's dehumanizing. And so I have gone on the offensive, if you will, to outsmart the oppression as I looked at my lineage and my ancestors seeking the higher ground. So with who they are, with the introduction of dance and culture, with New York as my playground. I grew up in the borough of Staten Island and would just take the ferry to Manhattan, take the number 2 train or 3 train up to Harlem. And that's where my dad was from. And just wander the streets, take dance classes. My mom would be like, "Where were you all day?" I was in Harlem. So I've just had this brave, and I also want to say loving soul. When I was 4, our family attended church, and I remember going to church on this occasion when I was 4. My father sang in the choir, and he had this long robe, and he was rushing in to go up to the choir stand. And I ran up to the front of the church, and I began kissing people up and down the pews. People were leaning out of the pews to get kisses from this little 4-year-old girl. And fast forward to a few years ago, I have an elder cousin who is now 97. And she reminded me, she said, "Do you remember when you ran up and down kissing everyone?" And I said, "You remember that?" She said, "How could anyone forget?"
Aw.
And so I think that essence of joy and love was part of my go to earth card. You know, this is my lane, what I'm to cultivate and bring to humankind, to humanity, is the love and the joy inside of the context and very clear awareness of the disparities and the reductionist systems and sanctioned, government sanctioned violence against people in Black bodies. So it's the balance. I'm here to bring the balance, if you will.
Yeah, totally.
So that's my New York beginnings.
Right. And that awareness, having that awareness so early on and knowing that that was going to be implemented in your life's work.
Yeah, part of the awareness also came in 1968 at the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I was in elementary school. And one of our teachers, an elementary school teacher, Black woman who lived in the neighborhood, she taught at a different school, but my elementary school was in her neighborhood where she lived. She started the Dr. Martin Luther King, at the time we were called Afro-American History class. And this class was foundational in setting a very solid, giving me a solid hook, if you will, to over the years hang my and build an identity around. Because as this young elementary school child, my mother made me go to the class because I said, I came home with a list of options for after school. I said, "Oh, I'm not going to that." And she says, "Oh, no. Yes, you are." And I was like, "Why?" She says, "Because you don't know who you are." And I was just like, "Well, what? How could this be?" And in her class, she paraded before us the lives of so many African Americans who had made significant contributions to the development of the country, to the development of arts, music, science, education, all of the academies, things that were never included in our textbooks. And then she brought in people from the community who were doing amazing things, and so that we could touch in real time. And she gave us vision for who we are and could become based on our own interests and desires. And her style of teaching stays with me in how I teach to this day. It's the 3 E's, I call it: exposure, experience, and embodiment. And what she did was surely expose us and have us have an experience so that we by and by could embody, integrate, become. And those 3 E's are mine, but those are what I gained from Mrs. Evelyn King. Staten Island, New York, 1968, probably to 1970.
That was actually going to be one of my questions, and maybe you have another answer too, but I was going to talk about mentors, right? So a lot of times we have these mentors who pop into our lives. And I know for me, I have mentors and they don't even know they're mentors.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's this whole idea of selecting a mentor and it's a mutual relationship and you both know, but for most people in my life, they may not have even realized, right?
Yes.
They said, and I think, for children or early on in our lives, I think it can just be something as simple as a small action that they took once, or a word, right? Or some words that they told you. In addition to the school teacher, were there any other mentors who really inspired you and kind of changed your path a little bit as a result of it?
Yes, in the Black psychology tradition where we pull in words of African origin, they're called Jenga, Jenga. Jenga, a little different from mentorship in that there is not a hierarchy, but there is this reciprocity, this reciprocal relationship. So there were other people who definitely inspired and influenced me. On my back wall is one of them, Judith Jamison from the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. And I'm sitting down, but I'm 6 feet tall, and so is Judith Jamison. And when I was in high school, a teacher said, I need you to see someone. And she took a group of us to see the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. At that time, they would perform at the holiday time in New York at City Theater. They have since moved their home base. And when I saw her dance, I felt a cellular rearrangement.
Wow.
Because, then I was pursuing dance at the time, but I felt that I'd never seen anyone as tall as I am, with such a commanding presence and owning it. And I truly got, and I continue to get over the years, that my height and my dark skin was on purpose. It's what I tell my son, who is very tall. He's like 6'8". And I say, Khalid, you are here to be seen. You are not here to play small. Your physical body is a communication.
Yeah.
As soon as you walk in the room.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I got from Judith Jamison. Another Jenga, I would say, afar off, was the revered now ancestor, Toni Morrison. Mm-hmm. In reading her books, another cellular rearrangement in how she wrote without the addressing the white gaze, but from the inside out. Mm-hmm. Then people in my own sphere that I was around, I have a cousin, her name is Diane Fredericks. She never married. She was always a professional woman. She would take me out to these lovely, lovely lunches. And we'd read the New York Times, and she goes to every play on Broadway to this day. And so she just also was a model for me of the beauty of taking in the New York sophistication and making it one's own. Somebody in my grandfather's peer group, Lillian Codrington, I used to call her Diva because she wore high heels up until the end, honey. Up until the end, high heels, and she would just fur coats and would just go. And she just always also showed me you can go anywhere and do anything that you want. And I think this love of the feminine, jewelry, the art of adornment was truly among the women in my family. My my great aunts, they were all domestics. But every Thursday, and this was even before I was born, they would get together and cook and prepare meals, and then they would get dressed to the nines and go to the Savoy Ballroom in Manhattan and dance, and then come back to Staten Island. And, people were really driving then, and then walk to their various home locations, and then go back to work Friday because their employers, their white employers wanted them on hand for the weekend when they were entertaining. They wanted them on hand to serve. So I got this whole thing of the work, yes, but the play, yes, and the movement, yes, and the adornment, yes. So all of that.
I know, how fun, right? It's juicy and delicious.
Yes, yes.
So that must have been the days of Frankie Manning at the Savoy. He was one of my teachers, my swing dance teachers.
Really? So Savoy was before my time, but yeah, they would go to Savoy, very famous Savoy Cotton Club, all those places.
Yeah, that's where, he would dance there. He's a legend, actually. All right, let's pivot a little bit. During your time at the San Francisco Black Infant Health Program, which I didn't know about because we didn't talk about that at Wisdom 2.0, what most surprised you about the health disparities in infant and maternal mortality, right? Obviously that was kind of the underlying thread of what you were there to help and to change. But how did some of those, I don't want to say negative per se, but aha moments that really brought up some triggers for you, and how it helped you shape the program?
Well, the program is direct service to a population of Black women who are pregnant or parenting infants, so prenatal, postpartum. And the program is designed to really address a key indicator in why Black women lose their babies in the first year of life at much greater rates than the general population. And the thing that we were addressing is stress. Is stress. All of the research was had a hard time saying these disparities are because of a particular thing. It's not about our race. It's not about being Black, because African women do not have this issue. It has to do with the stressful environment in which Black women live, and then how the natural stress of pregnancy colliding with the stress levels, high stress levels that are in a Black woman's body. So we were looking at how do we help women with stress? We did group education. I brought in mindfulness actually to this program. When women would come in for group education, to have this quiet sitting, so successful that it's now written into the statewide curriculum. So every Black infant health program in the state of California opens up their group education with this quiet sitting. But so to me, the surprise, if you will, was that how, with all of our advancements in science, the best that we could come up with is stress. And ... what is that related to? It's related to how the system of racism plays out practically in a person's life. Your economic, the wealth gap, housing, education, and medical care.
Yeah.
The other thing that remained surprising to me was how many young women, even after we would coach them around how to engage with their medical provider, were not listened to. We saw that in Serena Williams 3 or 4 years ago when she was having her baby. She knows her body. She makes her whole living on her body. Her body is a vehicle for her expression in the world. And yet the medical providers would not listen to her. So that would come back time and time again. They didn't listen. This is what they said. I came with my birth plan, and they wanted to induce me anyway. I mean, and so what does that do? It adds more stress. So that remains.
You say they're not listening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, do you mean their choices around having birth and how to have birth?
I think each instance is different, but I think that what is consistent is that the medical model has a particular way of doing things, and if you are outside of that, then that's and you know, a doctor has a body of knowledge, but you have knowledge of your body, and so the skillful physician knows how to navigate both. And so what I found is that women just constantly came back and said, I don't feel heard, I don't feel cared for, from the best institutions that we have in our city. So that remains an issue to this day. And that although I am not the director of the program any longer, there are other projects that I understand have sprung up in the city of San Francisco and elsewhere to continue to address this. And I would say we are dealing with something at the very fragile beginnings of life. It's a fragile beginning because a woman is very vulnerable when she is pregnant.
Yeah, and I would imagine
that remains a surprise and a disappointment. I won't say that it was a trigger, but it was disappointing that we are still yet having the same conversations over and over and over again.
And I would imagine on that list too would be not getting the kind of support that they need.
Well, part of the support was that we were there, so that each woman had, we had, what did we used to call it? Social support groups. And each woman was assigned a family health advocate. So she had someone to talk to and to go over her life plan and so forth, and to help her connect with resources. So to the city's credit, or to the state's credit, see, this is a statewide program, and it's housed in health departments in places where the infant and maternal mortality rates are high, which is surprising for San Francisco because there's not a lot of Black people there. However, when you look at the ratio, it's high.
Right? When I've traveled around and seen such poverty, to come here where you have some of the biggest billionaires, right, who live here, and yet we're still faced with these issues.
Well, I'm not going to take this up, but I find that this is the crux of one of the issues, is really understanding and pulling out the thread of why. It is not a surprise if you understand how the country is designed. We are living out a very purposeful design. And so I think that what behooves us as citizens is to learn the history, so that we don't come into it like we're just entering a conversation that's already started, but we have no idea how it started. So I think that what is happening is purposeful, and it is a system, and systems function like this invisible hand because it's just designed to go that way. And we've all been trained up and coded and educated to keep the system going. And we have our different roles to play. So what's happening is people are trying desperately to disrupt that. That's why it's called a disruption. We want to stop the machine. You know, I have this dryer, my dryer. You know, when you open the door the dryer is supposed to naturally stop, but my dryer is malfunctioning. So now when I open the dryer door, it still keeps going. And that is a great metaphor for how this system is. It just goes. It doesn't need us to push it forward. It needs us to become, which is why mindfulness is so important in my work, because mindfulness asks us to get off of autopilot and to stop and to become aware. And inside of that awareness, we can see and feel and notice so that we can then not be on the ride of compulsion or manipulation, but make some other choices.
Yeah, the autopilot, right? I mean,
Yes.
we're autopilot unless we stop and pause long enough to really realize what's in front of our noses, right? And that's the power of the present moment, which mindfulness brings us. So this is actually a really great segue into heart math. I'm a heart math fan as well, and I'm not certified, but I'm pretty aware of it. And Roland McCrady's been on our program. What aspects of that certification do you use in your own personal mindfulness practice? And how has it helped you as a practitioner? Because you have so many different diverse skills, of course, and talents. How does that play into it? Because, we're talking about heart coherence. And I think, when we're in that heart coherence, that our consciousness is expanded to such a point where we are aware of these autopilot behaviors, right? And when we're in heart coherence, right, there is no color, there is no discrepancy, there is no, there's none of these polarities that as human beings we've created, in this toxic world. We're just expanded into the all. So how has heart math and your understanding of it, including the heart coherence, helped you with your own practice and also serving others?
Well, I think that heart math is about intelligent energy management. It's looking at moving from the strong emotions that deplete us to how do we regain that balance, that coherence, the heart, the body, the mind, the emotions. How do we get them in sync, synchronized, so that we can have access to all? I do not think heart math is about not seeing race. I think that heart math allows us to, one, first and foremost, be in our own heart. The heart sends more messages to the brain than the brain does to the heart. So I love to say that heart math helps us to turn down, and then this is actually what heart math says about itself, help the breathing, the heart focused breathing, being slow and deep through the chest or heart area, helps us to turn down the volume on depleting emotions so that we can have more access. And that we can, and what does the heart represent everywhere? It represents love. So I think it's about, for me, heart math. I continue my studies in heart math because I think it's a brilliant mind-body practice to support human flourishing, which is what I'm all about, and to help us not only bring down the volume on those depleting emotions, but then to galvanize really positive and generative feelings like love, like gratitude. Hold that and then fan it out. So, hippie days, love and light, well, that's real. There's science behind it. Sending love and light, that's real. It's real. So that's what heart math enables us to do. And I think that also it's wonderful in times when you think, what can I do? It's similar. I'm also a Reiki practitioner, similar to Reiki. It's all about harnessing the energy of love and consciousness and God, so that you can send out something good when you feel like I don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
So heart math functions like that for me. And the group of mindfulness practitioners that I lead in the Department of Public Health, I'm now having them train in heart math as well, because I think that mindfulness, being present in mind, body, and emotions, and being able to hold that with an attitude of kindness and curiosity is one path. But the keys to really managing the emotions that can spin us out, it's not like that we'll stop having that, but we need ways to be able to recover. And that's, I think, the beauty of heart math for me personally, and what I'm bringing to my work. Big emotions are so funny, because I was thinking I'm going to talk to one of my resident scholars about that as I'm doing my work in the Right Within experience. The big emotions still show up, and I want to address that with more specificity for people.
Yeah.
Give people tools, because they won't go away.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people want practical advice, right? Because
yes,
the triggers still come up and you think, wow, I've mastered that. And then suddenly it rears its ugly head once again. And you're like, wow, I thought I put this behind me.
yes,
And suddenly the trigger starts to unravel us.
yes. This happened to me. It just happened to me when I was in New York. You know how when you go home, sometimes you're your fabulous self and you go home, and the next thing you know, you're 14 again, or people think you are, that part. So my brother, over a text, said some things to me on a family group text that were like, he literally fire hosed me. And I had the big reaction, and then I'm texting him back. And then now I'm in the spin, and I bit the bait, and it's dragging me, right? It's dragging me.
Yeah, that was a really great way to describe it. You bit the bait. I
bit the bait, and for so many reasons. I was vulnerable to him. I thought I was safe, and then I bit the bait. And my husband said, "Don't answer. Are you still talking to him?"
Right.
Don't answer. But no. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I bit the bait. Okay. And now I had to take time to recenter myself. And then I had to do it again when my sister says to me, "I saw that thread and you are supposed to know better." See, and so that little fiery dart. But on that one, I just did not bite her bait. The fiery darts will come. There are times when we succumb because we're human, but having tools to help us recover and find our way back, and having tools to sometimes in the moment be resilient and aware enough to not go there. And this is so important in the big topic of racialized reductionism, is because why we want to be able to hold on to ourselves is because, one, I'm here to flourish and to live beautifully, pursuit of happiness, and because this is my biting the bait. I need to find ways to be strategic about how I respond. It's about strategy. If we are in a war of any kind, you win through strategy. I don't study war, but one of my scholars on my team, he will always remind me, he says, "I'm a revolutionary and I'm a strategist, Jenée."
Yeah, it's a valid point, right? We need strategies.
We need strategies. And so these are the strategies that help us to hold on to our humanity and help us to flourish and help us to find fulfillment in life as we are in these big conversations and big missions. if we are doing this mission work without joy, then we are doing it wrong. And so this is what these kinds of practices help with.
Yeah, and those triggers are always going to come up, especially with family, right? Especially with family. I think it's a way for us to learn and practice how to do the reset, right? And so the fact that it happened twice with you, I'm not surprised, right? Because it's a way to go back, be like, oh, I have the awareness the second time around, and I cannot go down that spiral.
Yes, yes. And there's no shame in the game. That's the beauty of it. You know, it's all learning, it's all lessons, that's why it's called a practice. It's all practice. And you get to continue to grow and evolve and notice and watch and learn and feel and be in it without being guilted into anything about yourself.
Yeah, that's, I think, a really important message, is that no judgment zone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no judgment zone for others, but most importantly for ourselves, right?
Yes.
We don't have self-love, self-care, right? And
compassion.
And compassion for ourselves, then how can we give it to others?
Yes, indeed.
I mean, we are all mirror neurons after all. We're kind of replicate what we throw out there is exactly what comes back to us. So let's talk now about your work at the Right Within experience.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating name, by the way. Yeah, it's like really fascinated by that. And this program, I guess it's an immersion program, right? And it helps people of African ancestry. It addresses human rights and exalted emotions that are eroded in Black lives through the consistent exposure to the trauma of racism. And every time we feel, as a society, I know I feel this, that we've made headway, we've moved forward, and then something happens and you're like, how did this happen, right? The way that we have been wired and conditioned and educated to behave, right, and to act hasn't been healed collectively.
Yes, it's persistent. It's a persistent traumatization. Racialized trauma is persistent. It affects white people as the same way. It affects white people, although they don't think that. Often people don't think that. But their humanity is diminished in the perpetuation of racism.
Absolutely.
The Right Within experience, the name came from a line in a song by the Fugees, singer Lauryn Hill. And the song is called Doo Wop. And one of the lines says, how you gonna win if you ain't right within? How you gonna win if you ain't right within? So the Right Within experience is a mind-body, mindfulness, mind-body program. It's a day-long, online or in person, designed to reclaim humanity, joy, and well-being for people of African ancestry through mindful practice. So we look at the neurobiology of liberation. The tagline in the program is, liberation is a lifestyle of love. I came to this when I was studying mindfulness and came across the neuroscience principle of neuroplasticity, that what we think, do, and pay attention to with consistency affects our experience and our physiology. And I was like, what? What I think, do, and pay attention to consistently, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is the nugget for our liberation, because we're about to think, do, and pay attention to some other things.
Yeah.
So the humanity piece rewrites the historical narratives around that foster our victimization. It's a term that I coined called the victim vortex, because the racialized narrative always has Black people in victim mode. Oh my God, I gotta be twice as good to get half as far. It's just the victim vortex. They don't like me. I'm always, why did that lady treat me like? I mean, you're always, there's a hypervigilance.
Yes.
And it's not unfounded, because when racism enters the room, it is very violent and mean. But if you rewrite the narrative and understand the system, then you're not a victim to it. You get to turn the table and you get to talk about yourself in a different way. So that's the humanity piece.
That's key right there. That's the key, because it's, when you're going into this, the language that you're telling yourself, you're caught in and it is founded. Of course it's founded. But if you keep going there, you can't get out of it. Right.
So we get to outsmart the injustices by what we think, do, and pay attention to consistently. And this is why it's a mind-body mindfulness program. The joy is we learn to make joy have more than a cameo appearance in life. Oh, there's joy and now it's gone. We get to make joy be truly the fuel that supplies the energy for how we do life. And we look at well-being because we need to have wellness practices along a spectrum, a constellation of them that we are dedicated to. So this is why it's a lifestyle program. To be free is not an arrival, it is a way of being. Mm-hmm. And so we teach people heart math, meditation. We talk about rest. We don't do at this moment, but I see the expansion around good food and nutrition to outsmart the corporate food industry that has us on food-like substances and not real nutrition. All of these things. So people do a full day long, that's why it's called an immersion. We immerse in humanity, joy, well-being. After the day long, we step away and people go away with a journal. 28 days of journaling about self-love and gratitudes. And they have other things that they're to do. Nature, warm baths, bone broth, there's recommendations that we make. And then after the 28 days, we come back in a reconvening to say, how did it go? What else do you need to ask? We may have one of our resident scholars be at that reconvening. And what I plan to add in the next year are master classes, because it takes time to really build a mindful practice in your life and to have mindfulness show up in all the ways. And to make your go-to, the heart-focused breathing is the baseline practice in the Right Within experience. The slow, deep breaths through the chest or heart area, slow, even breaths. That's the baseline breathing practice in this work. So we've launched it, it's out in the world. We've done an online version, an in-person version, working, improving the web, doing all the things, getting the website refined, and we'll offer the program again come the fall, online and in person. And then people can actually contract with me to bring it to their organizations. The program is designed for people who are on the front line of some kind of a mission, entrepreneurship, social justice, community service, so that they can bring this new way of thinking in and then share that to help transform their organizations.
Do you start with triggers for people before you kind of go through this healing process? In other words, like each of us, I'm sure, right? When you're going through something like this, there's different triggers that come up to keep them in that place of, you're talking about you don't have the inner joy, you've got the language that keeps them small, right? Because that's what they've grown accustomed to, or anger, or whatever these emotions are that are founded, but they're not helping serve them, right? Because you want to be such a beacon of light, and that's what you're talking about with the inner joy, that all of this toxicity out there just bounces off them. So do you start with a specific trigger they have to deal with?
No, we don't do that. I don't do the work that way. We don't go deep into the trauma. In the work, I explain the trauma. This is what you have been experiencing. this is what has been happening to your body. But we come into the room dancing. We come into the room with music. You know, we don't heal that way.
Yeah.
You know, one of the examples that I use is the Rwandan prescription for depression. After the genocide, Western psychologists went into Rwanda to with the intention of forwarding the healing. And I understand the story goes that many of them got kicked out because, and I use this story in The Right Within. The gentleman said, "You want to bring us into these small, dingy rooms and have us recount all this trauma. We do not heal that way. Our healing practice is sun, drum, dance, community." See, that's that Western psychological talk therapy, which has its place, by the way, because I'm affiliated with the Association of Black Psychologists. My husband is a therapist, but it's how you enter the conversation. And we don't enter the conversation like that, trauma focused. We enter the conversation of you are whole and complete. Some things have happened to you, yes. Let's understand what that is all about. And let's understand the impact and effects and adaptations, because the victim vortex is simply an adaptation to all the daggone negativity. And now here you have some tools to make some different choices. So that's how we enter. I enter the work. I never enter the work through a trauma conversation, although I teach trauma at the San Francisco Department of Public Health. Even there, we don't begin with the trauma story. We begin with stories of resilience. Look at this group of people. We parade before them a group of people who had terrible trauma and yet overcame. And we point out how did they do that. So I think how we enter the room sets the tone and the vibration and the frequency for how we carry out. And people are like, what? Oh my goodness. I had no, girl. They love it. I was really surprised. And I think the youngest person was 27 and the oldest person was someone in their 70s. So and then everyone in between. And people got in touch with, there was tears, lots of laughter. There was silence as people took certain portions of the curriculum in. But this is my love letter to people of African ancestry. I teach everyone. Over the pandemic, I taught so many people because I'm about human flourishing. Human suffering is universal. But what I have taken on is the wellness of people who I have lived experience with and elevating this. And my program, by the way, the funds that seeded the birth of this came from the Katali Foundation. They have a whole strand on mindfulness and justice healing. And so it's been a joy to put together, and it's a divine offering. I am a transmission for the work because it's existing not just up here academically. It is an energetic disruption of a conversation that offers people an opportunity to occupy themselves in sovereignty and be on a path of fulfillment in spite of all the chaos that's around us. I often like to use my my snow globe because I can't. But if we could just sit still for a moment, what begins to happen? There's a settling. And this is the beauty of the heart math practice, because intelligent energy management, intelligence is clear-sightedness. Mm-hmm. You can have clear-sightedness if you can calm the nervous system and then be about the business of rewiring the whole experience. And so that's why it's the right within experience. It's an experience of humanity, joy, well-being.
Well, I love the fact that you bring in the embodiment piece, right? Because you're saying, well, that's not how we heal, right? We heal through movement and fire and drums and, moving the body. That's one of the things I love so much about the femme work, actually.
Yes.
Is moving the trauma through you, because vessels. I mean, I think what you were just saying just now was that it happens through you. You're the vessel. And, I'm a Reiki master as well. And so I understood that reference well. We are vessels of which energy and healing transmits.
Yes.
And we just get out of the way.
Yes. Yes.
And let it.
Because we have form, and oftentimes people want to bypass the form, but it's through the form that the consciousness is expressed. And so I really try to, I tell the unadulterated truth, but I don't leave people in the space of the muck and mire of it. I try to give people some space to hold that. And because trauma healing, connection is the healing balm of trauma. And so we don't have to just go and meditate in our rooms by ourselves. We can be in community, and then you have your individual practice, but it's building this work in community that helps make the difference.
I could not agree more. I mean, community has just been a life-saving place for me and for everyone I know, right? And when we don't have those support structures, which, if we're from a place where we're not getting that support for whatever reason, we're not going to flourish.
Yes, it's so important. And then at the back end of the right within experience, we get to hold ourselves in deep love and reverence, which then positions us then to be in relationship with others. Because the sacred text says, love thy neighbor as thyself. As you love yourself is the way you get to love other people. And so it positions us to be, I told you my calling cards are joy and love. So I have it for everybody. I have it for everybody. I have it for everybody, but I first and foremost have it for myself.
Have to.
Which gives me, which was that 4-year-old who was totally exuberant. She had it in herself. So what was the natural, the natural thing to do was to just give it away, share it. So I think that, and I just think that that's what we're on the planet to do. We're people of African ancestry is where we all started. We all started there.
Of course we did. Yeah. It's funny because there's controversy over that too, right? But I've lived in Africa 3 times now. And when I'm there, something takes over. I can't put my finger on it, but I just, there's a place in South Africa, actually in the Curator, where I was a foreign exchange student there in if I say the year, then everyone's going to know how old I am. The 1980s. So that was pre-apartheid, right? That was like pre the banishment of it. And so that was a really tough time to be there. And my host sister, one of my host sisters, who's a journalist and pretty progressive, she lives with her husband in the Karoo now. And it's this silent place of just nothingness. And you just feel the pulse of humanity there. Know that that's where humanity began. You feel it. It's like this visceral feeling. My favorite moments my whole life is when I drove through Africa from Cape Town to
that's gorgeous.
Malaria and all. It was all worth it. It was all
gorgeous.
Yeah,
And I like what you're saying. You could feel it. You could feel it.
totally.
And the absentee, the insistence that Black people are not human or are subhuman, that whiteness is the standard of humanity, is so ridiculous. And yet, this is still the theory that our systems are built on, and we live out, and we live it out. So this is what we are endeavoring to, shine the light, tell the truth, disrupt. And the first disruption is in oneself, and then it moves out. But the systems are antiquated and harmful.
Yeah.
And we feel it in the agency, the city agency that I work for and with. And great efforts are being made to address that, which I'm very proud of our public health department for doing it. Imperfect as it is, there are people there who are taking a stand, if you will.
Yeah, because that's what needs to happen at this.
Absolutely.
It's just enough BS already, right? Let's get
Yes.
to the core of this and disrupt, right? Tell our inner truth.
Well, the patterns that I point out to my colleagues when I teach are the genocide of our indigenous family. We are on stolen land. The land grabbing, the enslavement, the Jim Crow, the involvement in Central America. These are patterns of domination. The pulling books out of libraries and off shelves, patterns of domination that continue. The insisting on a fictitious voting system, a system that said, "Oh no, you stole the election," really saying it like it's truth. And so it's delusional. Toni Morrison says it's akin to a neurosis. And so we just have to be mindful of those patterns, and endeavor not to be overcome by them, so that we can do better by who's behind us. We have children behind us, and we're telling them they can't read everything. But I get a chance to work with young people periodically, and I just think they're swift. They're swift. Why they need us is because they're not yet wise. And so there's this intergenerational thing that does need to happen. As for myself, I didn't start from scratch. I stood on others' shoulders. And for them, they need to stand on our shoulders. But I'm not sleeping on these young people. They're pushing the envelope in some beautiful ways. So I am hopeful.
I agree. Speaking of roots, you have Caribbean and Southern roots. And I'm curious how they both play into your spiritual life. In other words, are there rituals, ceremonies, traditions that you implement into your daily life from those cultures?
Well, they both were Christ-centered in their spiritual practice. And so I do have a Christ-centered faith. I'm also a minister and trained in the sacred text, the Holy Bible. And I was just gifted by my family, my paternal side, my great grandmother's Bible. And she was enslaved, but she was young when she was enslaved. And so she was alive when freedom came. And I now have her Bible. And I'm just getting advice on how to handle it, because you open it and it's so old that some of the papers are fraying. So I was told just put gloves on, and I have to take it to a particular I forgot the name of it, but it's some kind of bibliophile that really knows how to deal with these antiques and antiquated texts. So their faith, they're all people of faith, meaning they all took with them the embodied African traditions of all Africans always believe in powers greater than themselves. So my family was the same, and I hold that to this day.
I can only imagine the energy that that Bible must have.
Yeah, it's amazing. My cousin, a younger cousin, he just got his PhD at what was he, USC. So he drove it across country. And so he's in Long Beach. And I said, oh, just FedEx it to me. He says, I will not give it to FedEx or UPS. He says, I'm either coming to you and you get it, or you're coming down here. So I ended up going to his graduation, and then he handed it to me in my hand to take back.
Probably a smart decision, actually.
Very.
Yeah, it's probably a smart decision. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like using it, you know, if it's too delicate to be used, but just the energy
Yes.
that imparts from that, right? That's enough. I think
Yes, yes. So I've got to I will learn how to best store it and care for it, but it is too delicate for me to, you know, turn the pages of it. But the practices of reading the scriptures, prayer, fellowship, and then I have been influenced and inspired by other spiritual traditions as well, but that's at the center for sure.
You know, I love how at the beginning we were talking about mentors and people have inspired you, and they've all been women, which is amazing.
Yes.
You know, and we talk about the energy that we receive from these goddesses in our lives, right? It's very real, it's palpable.
Yes.
The energy. And it's funny that you mentioned this, because before we started our interview today, I was, you know, fishing around on your website, and I saw a few of your interviews, and I noticed, because it was the same background, I noticed the picture on the wall. This first thing, and I kept gravitating to it. And I did as soon as we started as well. And I was like, I want to know who she is. You know,
yes.
I love that story. Yeah.
Judith Jamison, in that photo, she's dancing the dance that Albert Ailey choreographed for her called Cry. And it was in dedication to his mom and other Black women. But I know I didn't say any men, but listen, I've got a fabulous godfather, 2 dads, a wonderful grandfather, one of my scholar mentors, Dr. Obata Shaka. He is so wonderful, been with me just most of my career in San Francisco. He totally believes in me. And I'm really surrounded by some wonderful scholars. I say my work is rooted in scholarship, science, and spirit. I am a practitioner. Dr. Wade Nobles, who was one of the founders of the Association of Black Psychologists, helped me to make that distinction between a scholar and a practitioner. And they're both needed. And my work leans into the work of the scholars, into their research and into the academy. And then I take it and then I make it accessible to the everyday person. Yeah. So that's why I often say I'm a curator, because I look for the gems and the riches across across scholarship and science and spirit, and then I put it together in my own way.
Which is our whole series, right, is all about the merging of science and spirituality. For really, they are one, and
yes,
it's a perfect example of that.
Yes.
So let's talk about satisfaction, right? There's jobs, there's careers, and there's professions, and then of course there's life purpose, and you're clearly doing it, and you feel that. So this is what makes it easy when we know when we're stepping into our life purpose. It makes it easy to get up every day, right? With joy and resilience and all of those qualities that make life worth living, right? So what is your favorite part of the work that you do? Where do you get the most satisfaction?
When I'm presenting. after I've done all the homework and I put all the slides together, but when I get to actually be with the people and present it, that is the greatest satisfaction. You know, in my background, I've been a thespian, I've been in the theater, and that has never left me. And because also I'm a minister, so something spiritually, the anointing just kicks off, and I hold the space, and I literally minister the content to people. And I also think that's why Reiki was so attractive to me,
Yeah.
because of that, being that vehicle or vessel for that life force and energy, the essence of it. So that's the most, I think, satisfying part of it. I think the more challenging part of the work is shaping it for the marketplace, because that's a business aspect. And so what I'm endeavoring to do is not get into click funnels and all that stuff, but just to really have my work be spiritually led. It's sound, but have the decisions that I'm making around the marketing piece to be really come from the inside out. And that's practice, because it's an area that is new to me. So I've given myself permission to just be a student of that, and to take and to seek out really successful businesswomen who have operated in that way, and have not gone the way of kind of that traditional grind, because I'm not into the grind culture. This and so that I can magnetize, if you will, the people and the organizations that are desirous of this work. So really keeping my vessel like tuned up, because that is the work. That's what I got, is that the work is in my quiet time, such that when I step into this, even meeting you, that was part of it. How we connected and locked in and shared this energy. Like that was another, Renee, we had a divine appointment.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have to search all over for you, and you didn't have to search. We found each other, click. And that's really my desire, Renee, to do the work in that way. Because otherwise the grind culture and there are aspects of sound entrepreneurship that must be employed, but I've been working, and I don't mind telling you get you figuring out my age. I've been working for 40 years. So I'm not trying to do all that. Okay.
I like to say it's an outdated paradigm, but
yes,
unless we have new mentors who are showing up and showing success through, you know what it is? It's really like frequencies, right?
Yes.
And we're sending out frequencies, and that's how we found each other in the bathroom.
Yes.
No, seriously, that's how it happened.
Yes.
Like frequencies find each other, ding, 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 ding. But then too, I also find that to be a challenge, because I used to run a PR and marketing agency. And so I've been very trained and wired to do things like the click funnels and, all of the traditional things to grow businesses. And I too am trying to get out of that mindset, right?
Yes.
And just allow more.
Yes.
Allow more. So we do need strong women in particular, I think, who are mirroring that, so we can mirror it back and just create a whole new paradigm.
Yes, indeed. So that's the school I'm in right now. It's figuring out how do I do that, and so that I don't feel drained and don't get into any scarcity or feel like I won't get seen, like I'm taking the workbook for the Right Within experience, and I'm refining it for publication. And then, okay, now what? After it's done, so so that part. So I know it will make its way where it's supposed to go. My job right now is get it done and prepare it, take the bones of what I have and elevate it, and it will make its way the way it's supposed to. So I've been studying up a little bit on, okay, what are some paths towards publication, and I was on we were on a trip in Morocco of all places, and a publisher was there, and she said, have you ever thought about writing a book? Well, actually, yes. And so I did investigate her publishing company, but it's not right for me.
Yeah.
So, so it's coming, it'll come.
Yeah. Well, that was my last question to you, and you kind of spoke about it. And that was, what's next for you, books, programs, or whatever. And so it sounds like a book is coming.
Yes, the book that will go with the Right Within experience, and then 2 other offerings. Young women have been coming to me, my work in the Black Infant Health Program, and just in general, how do I age? How do I love myself? I'm like, that is a deep conversation. So one of my next offerings is going to be 6 decades of treasured wisdom. And that is for women of all ages, really, because people are just interested in how to live a beautiful life. And I have some things to share on that. And the next program that I will offer alongside of that is called Enjoying God. And it will be some basic keys and principles from the sacred text, the Holy Bible, to have one really have a true, vital spiritual relationship with God. So it's not, I'm not evangelizing, and I'm not promoting a particular denomination, because I don't really, that's not my practice. But there are some tried and tested verities in that book that people are have no knowledge of, or have forgotten, or
have been taught it incorrectly.
And I would like to just open that up. There's some beautiful text in the sacred text that talks about, get my guys straight, one planted, one watered, but God gave the increase. So this is in that same vein. I have some seeds to throw and water, and I trust God will lead and give the increase for each individual. We'll show them, what's the right church for you, or what's the right group, or what's the right whatever for you. I'm not making that recommendation, but in what I do, the 3 E's: exposure, experience, embodiment. And then folks get to move on and discover what their next step is for their growth. But when they leave me, hopefully they will know that that God is love.
So true, right? I mean, it's in the inside. I mean, speaking of holy texts, so much of what Yeshua, right, who we know is Jesus in the Western world, the parables that he said, the lessons that he imparted, the kingdom lies within. We have the answers. We're the gurus, right? And so we have that internal peace and that internal wisdom, but we've just forgotten, right? We've forgotten, or we no longer trust ourselves.
Well, that's what the being still is so important. One of the Psalms says, be still and know that I am God. It's in the stillness, in the still small voice. And we are on the grind and on the move, and just finding that stillness to hear. Yeah. And that be still is stop your striving. So that's just a little nugget of what I will be offering next.
Well, this has just been such a treasure to spend this time with you. And of course, we'll make sure that we put all of the links to your work and how people can find out more about you and your programs on the subsequent pages as well. But wow, just so many golden nuggets here today. So I hope that everyone who is listening is feeling your frequency, because that's really what's coming through. Right.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy to be with you. And I love your work and what you're up to. and what you're sharing with the world. It's beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.